Welcome student, this is Distinction Learning Platform, and on this platform you'll find revisions, examination questions. It will help you also to understand difficult topics. And before we begin our lessons, make sure that you subscribe so that you can be updated with all upcoming videos. To make the story short, let us begin. Alright, let's talk about general pathology, which is Robin based, because in most of the universities, the book that is recommended is Robin's. So we'll be using this book to explain concept. Alright, so let's talk about cell injury. Now, before we go into any details, let us understand what it means when it says cell injury. What is cell injury? Cell injury, basically, this is the damage made to the cell because a cell was exposed to harmful stimuli. So we'll talk about in details what the distinct forms of cell injury. We'll talk about them, don't worry. Now, for now, let's talk about the overview of cellular response to stress and the harmful stimuli. So before we begin, because if students are missing the major point of a certain concept, you are going to find that it will be left behind. So let us understand. So what is a stimuli? A stimuli is anything that makes a cell to respond. A stimuli is anything that makes a cell to respond. Now, we've got two types of stimuli. We've got stress stimuli and the harmful stimuli. So under stress stimuli, these are normal stimuli that will make a cell not to get injured. But if you talk about the harmful stimuli, these they make a cell to get injured. So harmful stimuli basically lead to cell injury. Okay? So now the overview will talk about everything about the cellular response to stress and harmful stimuli. Okay, so let us talk about something which is very, very important to understand. So if you talk about a cell basically, so this cell is always surrounded by a certain environment. So a cell is always surrounded by a certain environment. Maybe it can be extracellular fluid. It can be substances that are surrounding the cell. And this cell, basically, it will start participating to this environment. Why participating? Because it has to be maybe getting nutrients from that environment, maybe communicating with other nearby cells. So basically, what I'm simply saying is that a cell always participate in the environment. That participating will make a cell to start like changing. If the environment changes, also the cell has to change. Changing basically, it has to adapt. Why adapting? Because if the environment changes, the cell has to adapt. Why adapting? Because it is preventing itself from getting injured. Okay? So what I'm simply saying is that basically a cell maintains homeostasis. So this is the important concept of cell injury, homeostasis. Homeostasis is what? Maintenance of constant internal environment, whether intracellularly or extracellularly. So the body has to maintain homeostasis. So the cells also maintain homeostasis, whether they are participating in the environment or not. Okay? Now, what is the second concept that you have to understand? So let's say, what if a cell is exposed to these two types of stimuli, whether stress or harmful stimuli? How do they respond? So let us start with the first one, which is stress. So stress stimuli, a stress stimuli, basically they say it is a normal stimuli where a cell will adapt to that stimuli. I mean that's not going to get injured. Okay? So normal stimuli, according to medical terms, we call it physiological stimuli. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that stress is always a physiological stimuli. Sometimes it will depend on the duration. So if that stress stimuli is prolonged, it will lead to cell injury. A cell can die because it is exposed to a stress stimuli for over a long period of time. Okay, so stress stimuli. So if a cell is exposed to stress stimuli, what will happen? A cell will what? Adapt. So this one, cell adapt. Okay, so the response if a cell is exposed to stress stimuli, mean that the normal stimuli. So if I'm saying stress stimuli, what is a good example of a stress stimuli? Maybe if someone is doing some exercise, maybe someone running like that. So those are like those things, those activities, those normal activities that are going to start stressing the cell. So stressing the cell can make a cell to respond in different ways. Maybe it's going to get large, which is hypertrophy. It's going to get small, maybe that is atrophy. Maybe it's going to start dividing, to become many, that is hyperplasia. Or maybe it's just going to start producing new cells, that is the metaplasia. So that's how a cell can respond if it is exposed to normal stimuli such as the stress. And remember that normal stimuli can be also pathological. Why? Because if it is prolonged, can lead to cell injury. Okay, so what I'm saying is that how do cells respond to stress stimuli? They adapt. So mean that is cellular adaptation, which we'll talk about from the other section there. So the cell can adapt by doing what? It can hypertrophy. So there is this hypertrophy. Okay. What else? There is cell atrophy. What else? There is cell hyperplasia. What else? There is cell metaplasia. So these are the four main cellular adaptation, or this is the these are four main ways in which a cell can respond to stressy stimuli. So they can either hypertrophy, mean that they are going to become large in size. They can be atrophied, mean that they can decrease in their size. Also, they can undergo hyperplasia, mean that they'll start dividing, becoming many. They can they can undergo metaplasia, mean that there will be new cell production. So a good example is that if a tissue or squamous tissue, then if it changes to columnar tissue, it means that it has undergone metaplasia. There will be new cells that have been produced. Okay, so these are four main ways in which a cell can respond to stressy stimuli. Now, what about harmful stimuli? How can it respond? So since we've started with stress, now how can it respond to harmful stimuli? I say in the first place, I say harmful stimuli, they can lead direct to cell injury. Cell injury is what? Damage to the what? To the cell because of what? Being exposed to harmful stimuli. Let us talk about that. This is getting interesting. So we are saying a cell can also be exposed to harmful stimuli. Okay? Can be exposed to harmful stimuli. Now, like cellular adaptation, where it can be responded into four main ways because it was exposed to stress stimuli. Also, cell injury, a harmful stimuli, it can lead direct to what? Cell injury. So the cell respond by maybe directly being injured. So let's say harmful stimuli, the first point is that it will directly to what? Cell injury. So what are we saying? It will lead direct to what is cell injury. I never say that if a cell is exposed to harmful stimuli, the cell will start adapting. Then that's a wrong concept. A cell will be injured. Okay? Now, this cell injury again, we need to understand something because cell injury can be of two ways. There is damage that can be reversible and damage that is irreversible. Make sure that you understand. So what is the reversible injury? It means that a cell is damaged. Now, after some time, if you remove that harmful stimuli, then it can go back to what? The normal cell, or being normal. I mean that means that homeostasis, or going back to the normal state. So that's what we call reversible cell injury, because it's able to go back to the normal state. But irreversible now, the cell has been damaged severely and progressively, meaning that it will undergo cell death. So what am I simply saying? This cell injury, it has two ways. So this cell injury has two ways. The first one is reversible cell injury. Okay? What did I say about reversible cell injury? Goes back to normal state. Okay? Then what else? Also, there is another response, irreversible cell injury. Then what about here? Does it go back to what? Normal state. It will lead to what we call cell death. A cell will die because it can't go back to normal. It will die. And remember that if you talk about dying of a cell, it has also two ways. A cell can die in two ways. Maybe it can die normal, which is apoptosis, and it can die maybe abnormal, which is necrosis. So what am I saying? Cell death also has two ways. It can die normally, which is the apoptosis. Don't worry, we'll talk about cell death as well. Apoptosis and the necrosis. So there are two types of cell death, apoptosis and the necrosis. So that's the main thing about cell injury. So cell injury, what are we saying? So we are saying harmful stimuli can lead to cell injury. Cell injury means that the cell has been damaged. Whether maybe it's reversible, means that the reversible cell injury, it can go back to the normal state. Irreversible means that it can't go to the normal state. It will now die, which is cell death. Cell death again, it has two ways. It can die normally, which is apoptosis, or it can die abnormally, which is necrosis. Okay? So now, let us summarize everything that we've talked about using these diagrams. Okay? So let's start with the first one. The first one, we said a cell always maintains homeostasis. So this is the normal cell here. This is the normal cell trying to maintain homeostasis. Okay? This is the normal cell trying to maintain homeostasis because a cell always is being exposed, or it is an active participant in its environment. Okay? Now, this cell, what if it is exposed to stress stimuli, which I say to be, this is the physiological stimuli, because normally, or in most of the cases, stress stimuli is physiological. Maybe those bodybuilders or those athletes, they are exposed to stress stimuli because the cell is being stressed. So it is going to undergo cellular adaptation. So stress stimuli can lead to what? We know that it can lead to cellular adaptation. Okay? Now remember that this cellular adaptation is a good thing, and it can lead to what? Cell death, unless the stress is what? Prolonged. Then it can lead to cell death. Now remember that cellular adaptation, it can stop. If someone maybe, if you remove the stress that where the cell is being exposed, then it can go back to what? Normal state, like that. It can go back like that. Okay? Now remember that, what if now the stress is so severe or prolonged? Quite alright, there will be cellular adaptation. Then if the stress is not removed, it is chronic, it is just prolonged, then it can lead to what we call cell injury. You see? No wonder I said stress can be pathological because it is leading to cell injury. Reason being, the stress is not being removed. But if it is not there for a short period of time, the cell can adapt and go back to normal. Okay? And what else? So this is the first stimuli. The second stimuli is where now something that can lead direct to what? Cell injury, which is what? Harmful stimuli. Harmful stimuli, or the other term that they use is noxious stimuli. So this harmful stimuli can lead a cell direct to cell injury. So we talk about there are a lot of harmful stimuli. Maybe if someone is having hypertension, okay, maybe someone is having stenosis of valves. So those things or those conditions can lead to what? Cell injury. Okay. Now remember that cell injury. What did I say about cell injury? Cell injury can be reversible cell injury or irreversible cell injury. So reversible cell injury is what? So is when the harmful stimuli, this harmful stimuli is mild, is not that serious, okay, and transient. What does that mean? Transient, it means that this harmful stimuli, it is of short duration. It is not there for a longer period of time, because if you are exposed to harmful stimuli for a longer period of time, now that cell injury, it will be irreversible. Then the cells will start dying. Now, if it is transient, means that short duration, it can go back to what? Normal cell, which is maintaining homeostasis. So what are we saying here? This is reversible. To lead to reversible cell injury. Okay? So remember that reversible cell injury can lead back to what? Can lead back to normal cell, which is maintaining the homeostasis. Very, very important point. Okay? Now, what is the other way around? What if this harmful stimuli is not mild? It is not also transient. Now, it is what? It is severe, mean that serious, severe and prolonged, chronic, prolonged, or progressive. It can lead to what? Cell death. So if the cell injury or if the harmful stimuli is severe, prolonged, and progressive, then it can lead to what? Cell death. How many types of cell death did we talk about? We said there are two. There's what we call apoptosis, that we talk about, okay, and also necrosis, which we also talk about when we start talking about cell death, okay. So that's where we end from on the overview of cell response to stress and also harmful stimuli. So, and make sure that don't forget to subscribe so that you can be updated with all upcoming videos, because this is just the first part, and we'll also talk about the second part, talking about cell adaptation into details as well, and we'll talk about cell injury in details. Thank you.